We're super excited. So I guess it was a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, I like to do the readings and figure out what's happening in the universe. I love all things biology and science. As we were talking about early PMS or PMS symptoms, living and kind of having a correlation to early menopause, anytime that I come across articles that are about women's health or more specifically mental health, they are of interest to me. And, I hear so many people talk about this show and why they watch this show. I have no idea why, but apparently it makes people laugh, gives a little joy in the morning to start the day, which is nice to hear. And so when I saw an article pass through my reading on CNN a couple months ago, it stuck with me. And it was a conversation about whether we should be pursuing happiness or be pursuing fun. So if I said that to you, what do you think that researchers are finding? Do you think that they would say, based on our research, you should be pursuing happiness or you should be pursuing fun? And so there is some research to support one or the other. I'd love to know what you think. So Renee says we should be pursuing fun. Tracy says happiness. Roxanne says fun. Chris says happiness follows fun. Happiness equals fun. I pursue fun and happiness follows. Tamiko says fun. Ira says fun. Fun because it brings happiness. Athena says happiness. Linda says happiness. All right, so it's almost 50-50. So this is why I thought it would be great to talk about this. So the article interviewed a great fella named Dr. Mike Rucker. And it was like a Q&A talking about why we should be pursuing one or the other, and some things that you could be doing in your life every day to kind of put you on a track to pursue that. And so I asked Michelle to reach out, and he happily agreed to join us today to talk about it. So let me go. Michelle, are you ready, Michelle, with our thing? There it is. So let me introduce Dr. Mike Rucker is an organizational psychologist, behavioral scientist, and charter member of the International Positive Psychology Association. He has been academically published in publications like the International Journal of Workplace Health Management. His ideas on fun and health have been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, Fast Company, Psychology Today, Forbes, Vox, Thrive Global, Mindful, Mind, Body, Green, and more. He currently serves as the senior leader at Active Wellness and is the author of the best-selling book, The Fun Habit, which is out now. It is an inspiring and motivational guidebook that'll help you, or that you'll want to share with everyone you know. It is anti-toxic positivity and happiness striving. The approach is very much about embracing all your feelings and mindfully adding more fun in your life rather than chasing after happiness. He shows you how to find the time and how to find the kind of fun that's right for you. So please help me welcome Mike Rucker. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, wait, hold on.
I love the soundboard.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of applause from our audience. I love it. Thank you so much. I loved your article and your take on all things fun versus happiness. Tell us how you kind of got started on this, a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So the short version of the journey is been studying happiness for quite some time. For folks that are familiar with positive psychology, as an academic kind of, research consortium, a lot of us band together in the early 2000s. And so that's why you're hearing a lot about gratitude and mindfulness and all these tools that are really helpful. But I think we've learned a lot in the last couple of decades. And so in the book that you mentioned, The Fun Habit, I unpack my story of kind of overemphasizing this goal of happiness and how it can lead to some interesting consequences. And we've learned that, not just my personal anecdote, but there's a lot of research to suggest, as you kind of mentioned in the introduction, that this toxic positivity, where we all feel like every day has to be a good one, and we lose emotional flexibility to kind of deal with the slings and arrows, can get us to ruminate on the things that are going wrong, because we had this evolutionary sort of predisposition, right, to worry about things because that's what we need to do to protect our safety. But, you know, we don't live in a world where saber-toothed tigers are coming at us anymore, right? We can kind of organize our day and celebrate the wins and, you know, kind of deal with the losses. And so for my own journey, I was like literally tracking on an Excel sheet, like what correlated with the best days ever. And, you know, and because I was having a pretty good stretch, but in 2016, my younger brother passed away quite suddenly. So it was just a bit of bad luck on the Oregon Trail. And then I had an accident. Up until that point, I had been kind of a amateur endurance enthusiast, not an athlete, but certainly enjoyed running in triathlons, and found out that I had advanced osteoarthritis, likely due to an earlier injury. So obviously losing my brother was quite traumatic. And then this way that I mitigated stress was kind of taken away from me. And so, but because I kind of had this Pollyanna look, because if you recall, you know, in those days, we were trying to, you know, live in this good vibes only culture, right? And I was like, I can will myself out of this. And paradoxically, the more I did, the less happy I became, the more unhappy I came. And so being a researcher in this space, I found that quite interesting, and found that because I was really looking for ways to help myself out of this, that there was this growing trend of folks that not necessarily values happiness, like, you know, wanting ourselves to be happy and our loved ones to be happy. That's not problematic. So I'd like to make that distinction. It's that concern, right? You know, where happiness does have some problematic aspects, where we're, you know, always engrossed in FOMO from these curated, you know, news feeds that we get, where people are only showing us their good days anyways. And we're like, so why is my neighbor, you know, always crushing it, and yet I have these problems? Yet your neighbor probably has the same problems, they're just not sharing it, right? And so but if you refocus, to answer your question, on what you can do, you know, reclaim the agency and autonomy you have to make choices throughout the day that can support your well-being, that can put you in opportunities for enjoying what you do, and that becomes your focus in the moment, then that's a really good antidote for, you know, this constant rumination of, am I happy enough? And so the distinction I like to make is, you know, happiness tends to live in the rearview mirror, right? It's really this act of evaluation, like, am I happy? Are the things I'm doing make me happy? Was that vacation good enough? Where fun, or just experiencing pleasure, is something that any given moment you can generally change your circumstances.
Do you think that, like, just by nature, like when you look at little kids, like, I don't ever hear my kids when they were younger say, I'm not having enough happiness. Like, they were just like, that's so fun. Like, is there an age at which we go from like just really enjoying fun to then, is it in your, I would imagine it's got to be in your 20s, right? Like, where you can't just.
So I think for everyone, it's certainly different. You know, it depends on your circumstances.
Right.
And it seems to be more a problem in the West than the East, you know, although everyone, you know, obviously has challenges. But the reason why it has this sort of, you know, bias towards the West is because we really are brought up in the social norms of meritocracy, right? From a very young age, we're taught that fulfillment and productivity should come at the expense of doing other things, right? This old Puritan ethic. And so it's kind of depends on when that really sunk in, right? For some folks, they really did enjoy college. I was certainly one of them. I went to Chico State, and I would love to relive those 4 years.
Chico State? That sounds like a fake school. I never heard of it. What is it?
It's in Northern California. It's known for, similar to Arizona State, for being a really fun school to go to. And certainly
really? It sounds like a fun school.
But I think, you know, certainly more and more you're seeing these institutions not meant to be, you know, just avenues for self-discovery, but for, again, kind of getting good grades, trying to figure out what the next job is, right? And so these things become problematic in the sense that we are taught at a very young age to filter the way we spend our time through productivity and kind of discount enjoying ourselves. Yet what we found, paradoxically, is the folks that also value their time and value wanting to enjoy the time they spend are some of the most productive people. And so that's why, you know, one of the unfortunate byproducts of, you know, this grind culture is seeing burnout at record levels across all vocations, right? Because it's insidious and it happens slowly over time, right? You're like, oh, well, I'll catch up this week and then I can have fun next week. But that becomes this perpetuating cycle, because the more burnout you are, the less you can do. And yet, you know, again, it's such a slow burn that, you know, it's hard to kind of figure out what went wrong, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because I thought that was so interesting, is that I think we do, right? Like all of us were like, oh, who's trying to get their kid into advanced math, and who's trying to get their kid to be in the, because there was a time, I don't know, it looks like we're about the same age, Mike, but they used to rank everybody and put you in percentiles. You're in the, you know, percentile this, but they don't really rank kids anymore. They started to, at least not in my kids' high school, they weren't ranking them anymore. It was like, you know, valedictorian, salutatorian, some other smart people, and then the rest. Like, it was interesting that talking about productivity and being able to show like, this is what I've done and all my hard work, and it's all really great. But I thought it was so interesting in your article that it said that actually the people that are the most productive are the people that are also self-reporting having the most fun, which is so different. I feel like, you know, like raising my kids, and there's like the tiger mom and like, you have to be the best and all of that. There was another article I remember reading where they had followed valedictorians over a course of time and asked them to self-report, like, do you like enjoy where you are? Do you think that you are a leader in your field? Like, we all think that these valedictorians are going to go on and do great things. And most of them self-reported, no, I don't really always enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm not really a leader. Like, and I was like, I don't want to say my percentile, Mike, but it wasn't good. And it was at the back. And I wasn't that person. And my parents didn't follow us around and be like, you have to do this. It was like, have a good time, do what you want. And so it's very funny to just kind of see where you land. And hopefully we're all doing a good job. I mean, like, what are some things that as parents and raising kids, what are good words to be saying to our kids? Or should we make sure that we're saying, we want you to do a good job, do the best you can, but have fun? I don't know that we all say that very often.
Yeah, I think, you know, for parents, what becomes important, because we are time bound, right? Often when we're looking at time, I like to think of the 168 hours that we have in a week, right? And so what are those opportunities to have fun with your kids, right? So if it is about dialogue, to, you know, answer your question, it's talking to them like, you know, where are the opportunities for you to enjoy yourself? One, are you finding those? Because, you know, as you know, every household is going to be different, right? There's going to be different scaffolding. There's going to be different social norms. But what I would suggest is universal, is that if the child isn't finding a way to connect with you and their friends in a meaningful way, you're slowly going to start to see negative consequences. And we're certainly seeing that now too, right? And so, you know, one of the focuses has been on social media, because that can trick you into thinking you are having fun, right? I'll geek out for just a quick second and then I'll get back. But in psychology, we call that valence, right? And so, you know, the way we kind of describe pleasure is, if you're on the positive side of valence, it means you're enjoying yourself. And that's a spectrum, right? From kind of just, you know, doing something you enjoy, like a hobby, to, you know, something really high arousal, like, you know, being at a Taylor Swift concert with your friends, right? To things that you don't enjoy, right? From something that's really tedious, like doing your taxes, to just being bored because you don't really, you know, you haven't planned well on how to use that time. And so what we're seeing is when a child, you know, is not really directed to use their time mindfully and does spend too much time on something like TikTok, one, it kind of hijacks their attention, but two, it sort of tricks them into thinking they're having fun, because it displaces that boredom, right? It displaces that kind of not fun, that negative valence state, but it doesn't get them into a positive valence state, right? And so what we know is that that kind of leads to what we call mind wandering. And if you're always mind wandering, you're not really encoding information. You're just kind of flipping through things that, you know, your mind tells you isn't important to remember, but it kind of, you know, feels good because it's displacing, you know, either some frustration or
so are you
discomfort.
saying, so like if you're bored and you're going on TikTok or whatever, you're just distracting yourself from your boredom instead of going and finding something you enjoy? Is that it?
That's exactly it. And so to answer your question, it would be asking your child, like, what can we do? We call that active leisure, right? Instead of passive leisure. Like, what is it that we can organize for you instead of using your time like this? Like, is it a play date? Is it something that, you know, just engaging them to help them be mindful of what is it the thing that they really enjoy? Because it's a 1-2 punch, right? One, you start to index these memories of things that are really enjoyable, and your child, and if you participate, I advocate for doing that. Like, I often talk about taking cooking classes with my daughter because we both have fun. And then also takes the sort of pressure off of me to be the teacher. Like, if we make a mistake, we can kind of laugh at someone else. It's not, you know, that power exchange. It's often when you know, someone's trying to pass on a hobby to their children. And it creates these memories, right? So you've indexed these memories that you can look back on and, you know, reminisce. So it has that extra power. But then it also displaces this thing that we know is causing a lot of loneliness and unhappiness for children.
So is there a time, Mike? So I feel like, you know, the chaos of life, you know, when you have little kids and you're running from thing to thing, like saying we should make time for fun is a little easier now that my kids are gone than when they were younger. And I think that all parents are kind of get into that rut where you're like, I can hear myself always just on my kids. So I'm going to try to also plan things that are super fun. But I also think that, like, this group that's here on Facebook, I would say some people are child rearing, but a lot of us are kind of in the other end of the spectrum. Do you find that as people get older, that innately they have more time to pursue fun? Do you find that? Or is it really something that we need to be mindful of that's a learned behavior?
So let me start by, I would never say make time for fun. I generally clarify that right up front, that you want to create the space so that fun can be filled in, right? When we, what we know is a facet of toxic positivity is someone that already has an insanely busy schedule to say, hey, let's stack fun on top of that, right? It's a recipe for disaster.
Like, forced family fun is not okay.
That's right. So
because that's all we did.
Well, because it creates what we call moral injury, right? I mean, it's just another sort of, you know, death by 1,000 cuts. Like, hey, you know, you're already worn thin, right? So let's add another thing you have to do and think about on top of, you know, an already stressed sort of cognitive load and busy schedule. But what can happen is, if you look again at that 168 hours, what a lot of people, you know, at first blush will say, well, I don't have time. Generally, we've habituated a lot of behavior that, if we look at it critically, like, wow, I really could, you know, not do that and use my time more wisely. One of the common ones that, you know, when a parent kind of thinks about it, is an easy flip, is the folks that, you know that they need to get their kids out of the house, so they take them to the park, but don't engage, you know, just kind of sit on the bench and watch their kids play while mindlessly, you know, flipping social media, which again, isn't really fun for you. It's just displacing the boredom. So there's a couple of things there, right? One, you're not having fun, but then two, it's such a lost opportunity for you to actually enjoy that time with your kid, because you're not really going to remember it, especially if it's something you just do week after week, right? So looking at those opportunities, and they're going to be different for everyone. How could I switch this? And oftentimes, you know, going back to your original question, it's just having a conversation. Okay, I don't want to go to the park again this weekend, but I do want to do something with you. What's something that we could both enjoy? And oftentimes they might give you one or two things and you're like, that doesn't sound like fun. You don't have to say yes. You don't have to always be people pleasing. Just like if they were with a friend and their friend said something that they didn't enjoy, like playing soccer, and they're like, no, let's do something else. You have that agency and autonomy too. You know, I mean, you can be a parent and a friend as well.
I love listening to you, because I feel like when my kids were young, like, so I was a full-time stay-at-home mom. And so by the time we got to the park, I was like, you need to get your face away from me, and mommy needs to sit here and have a whole conversation. I feel like so much of it is so hard because when your time is 100% your kids and you barely have interactions, I think that's hard. I think that's a hard balance, but I think that has more to do, Mike, with just having a better balance for your own mom brain. I think that, you know, I know myself, if I wasn't in a good space, no, I didn't. I was just like, you need to get this energy out, so you go to bed. And I think that
which is fair. Like, you know, to the extent,
do you find that that's a barrier for a lot of women? Just
well,
tired,
first,
just being tired.
Right. So if you feel like you're burnt out, just like, you know, the vocations that we kind of gave a tip of the hat to, figuring out how to remedy that is going to be an important first step. Like, if you don't feel you have the scaffolding you need to be able to survive, you know, we need to figure that out first, right? And so for everyone, that's going to kind of be different. But yeah, if you are coming at it with kind of a disdain in that activity, like, we need to figure out what is that problem, right? But what I would counter with that too is if you do feel a sense of wanting to enjoy the time you have with your children, remember, after those 18 years, we know that you have about only 1 year once they leave the house, you know, in accumulation, especially if they go away to school. So you really only have, you know, 18 summers to get this right. And so to let them pass by oftentimes does lead to regret. So I'm not saying in the moment feel guilty, but what I am suggesting is trying to be mindful of your time, to organize it in a way, one, that you do have that resilience. So you're not approaching those opportunities where, like, I just don't want to be around these kids. But that's obviously a bigger problem you need to solve. But then are some of these opportunities where both of you could enjoy yourself. And then certainly finding those times for renewal. Like in the book, I talk about, you know, organizing our time in a way that created dates so me and my wife could reconnect. Because we found, you know, probably like a lot of couples early on, we were so engaged and just so overwhelmed with all the new information that we were starting to disconnect. And so reclaiming just 2 of those 168 hours was all it really took, because they were very mindful hours where we got to share, you know, and then also figure out what it is that we needed to be able to move forward. And then we were able to approach our time with our kids in such a more joyful way because we had that resilience.
Yeah. Now, and it's funny too, because I feel like some of the best times were not always like, let's go golfing or let's go do this. We just got our bikes out and put air in them and rode around town, and we started playing. I taught my kids all how to play pickleball a couple of years ago during the pandemic. And so that was something that we could all do together, and it was engaging and it was competitive and fun. What are some like tips that you have for people who, you know, maybe kind of are in the thick of things, whether it's with kids or not? We do have a lot of people who their kids, like you said, have moved on and just trying to find fun for themselves. Like somebody today was like, it's gonna be raining this weekend. Does anybody have ideas on some things that I could do? Like, are there things that we could be doing in our life to just pursue fun instead of happiness?
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, it's a really simple sort of exercise, but just being mindful of what you do enjoy, right? Creating a fun file. So you can either do that for yourself if your kids have kind of moved on, you know, trying to remember what are the things that I do enjoy. And some you're not going to want to go back to, right? Like for me, obviously, I can't run again. So even though that'd be on my list, you know, it's not realistic. So I cross it off. But as you see in the back, I've reconnected with playing the guitar because that was something that I kind of had to give up when my kids were little. And now, you know, I've gone back to it because I really do enjoy playing it. And so you're just kind of putting it down so that it's premeditated when you do have those opportunities, because so much time will pass by if we don't have something top of mind, right?
Yeah.
If your kids still are at the age that you want to do stuff with them, a great exercise is to do that with them, right? Like, what are the things that we love to do together? That's how I discovered cooking with my daughter. She's like, I really want to learn to cook. I'm like, so do I. That's something I've wanted to do for a long time. And
so
we don't have to
your
spend a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
What?
And
Sorry?
your wife wanted that too, Mike. So it all worked out.
Yeah, exactly. And it was free because there's so many great cooking classes on YouTube, right? It's not like we did, you know, do a few lessons at a kitchen that allowed us to get really dirty, but now we do it at the house, you know, so that we don't have to spend money. So it, you know, it's that kind of stuff. Then if you're really struggling, I would say look at your fun friends, right? Like if you're like, I don't know what to do, there's definitely people within your network that do know what to do, and say, hey, you know, I really haven't had fun in a while. What are you doing? And could I join you? Because we know, you know, from Robert's great book, The Good Life, like one of the best ways to support our psychological and physiological well-being is to reconnect with our friends, especially coming out of the pandemic. So if you kind of feel like, you know, there's a lack of fun in your life, who are those fun friends that every time that you're with them, you have a big smile and you don't regret that time that you spent with them?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, so surround yourself with fun people. Well, we have a lot of fun people here, so hopefully it's shaken off on people, and it's a good thing. But this was great. And so Mike, his book is called The Fun Habit. So make sure you check it out. I'm sure it's on Amazon, right, Mike? You can find it there.
Absolutely. Wherever you enjoy purchasing books.
And you can find Michael at michaelrucker.com if you'd like to get some more information. Kate says, Mike, you're amazing. I'm going to try to see my freshman son at his college, and I want to try to make it fun. So that's awesome. So make sure you follow Michael at michaelrucker.com and follow more of his conversation. I think it's a great, just kind of small shift in being able to go from, are we pursuing happiness or fun? Because it feels like fun is an easy thing to pursue. Sometimes happiness gets real daunting. People are like, are you happy? You're like, no. And then you start crying. So I think fun is a much more fun way to go, and less pressure, and hopefully leads to happiness. So thank you so much, Mike, for joining us.
I appreciate it. Well, just like one of your listeners alluded to too, happiness ends up being an amazing byproduct, right? If you know, because fun is kind of a leading indicator, you know, we can figure out how to integrate it into our lives. Once we start to have those enjoyable moments and index them and realize we have the agency and autonomy over our lives to do that, then happiness becomes this amazing byproduct. We think about it less, but it's just there. You know, we don't try to quantify it. It's just, you know, and so we know this, you know, if you kind of, you know, point the shit forward instead of always looking in the rearview mirror, you know, it's a beautiful consequence. It's really being more happy.
Awesome. Well,
right.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here.
All right. Take care.